repeat the name of that barbecue joint? Because I definitely want to check it out. It's one of my
Okay,
passions.
Clyde Cooper's Barbecue.
Clyde Cooper's Barbecue. And that lifting, I mean, that's got to be against the rules, right? I mean.
Yeah, we always break up when I drop them off, though.
Oh, okay. All right, then.
You can't get attached.
Oh, well, good.
There's a whole long bit with that.
So there's a whole long bit with that? Who are some of the comedians that have inspired you?
Joan Rivers, for sure.
I can definitely see that Joan Rivers flavor with the way that you do your comedy and everything. Now, we were talking, like I said, Mr. Wiggins is in the D.C. area, and, of course, we know there's all kinds of craziness in D.C. I was wondering what your take on the whole things that are going on in the world, and particularly the U.S. are, because I imagine that probably gives you a whole rich amount of things to talk about on a comedy show.
Oh, I don't go political at all. In fact, it makes me like a little nauseous. Like, it's just so scary. I don't know. I can't really. My jokes aren't about it. But some people do that. I just don't. It's just I'd rather people like me. If you start talking about politics, like, you're gonna turn off like maybe 2 or 3/4 of the room.
That is true, because a lot of people, they just want to get there, and a lot of times they just want to get away from whatever's going on, so they're not even trying to think about whatever the politics are, because they just want to get away from the madness of whatever's happening, whether that's what's going on in their own individual life or what's going on in the national or the world scene, because sometimes folks just need that comedy as a release to get away.
If you and your wife are going on date night on the credit card because you don't get a government paycheck, you don't want to hear about it in a comedy act.
That's very true. Yeah, if you're going on a date night and you've got that government check not happening and the credit card might be declined at any moment, you're right. You don't want to hear about that in a comedy act. That is absolutely the case.
Yeah, that would just give everybody anxiety. Everybody would have a bad time.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine. He was actually, I saw him earlier today. He's a funk musician, and he was having some serious anxieties because of what was happening in life today. So I'm sure you can relate to that, because he was dealing with, it's first of the month. It was upon us any minute now. So we just got through with one, and the next one is around the corner. So he was dealing with rent anxieties and the other anxieties. So just life anxieties. And he too is a single person and a single parent with a funk band that he's trying to manage and run. So he was having all kinds of anxiety. So I'm sure that you could probably make whole comedy routines about what he's been going through.
Yeah, man. And as a Lyft driver, you would be, I don't know if you'd be surprised, but the amount of things that I learn and hear, I decided that I'm going to be a golfer. I decided that this weekend. I think the universe is pushing me into golf.
Now, why is the universe pushing you into golf? What about the universe would push anybody into golf? I mean, it's a game where you sit there and you basically, you swing at the ball, you hope that it doesn't hit a tree or a squirrel, and that it goes into the designated hole that it's supposed to go into. So why would you even want to get involved in the game of golf when I don't know which is more boring, golf or bowling? They're right up there close. And I'm saying that with having an uncle who used to be an avid golfer before having some medical issues, and still is a big golf fan.
Well, I think if you're a professional or an executive person and you're a golfer, I think deals happen on the golf course. That is true. And if you try to make some comedy deals, or you try to get into a movie or a TV show, you might be good to know golf. Phil, do you play golf, and has it helped you at all in your musical career?
I do not play golf, but I'll tell you something. You mentioned Richie Havens before. I had the pleasure of riding in a limo with him from the airport to a festival. I think it was up in Canada. And to my shock and disappointment, turns out he's an avid golfer. I would never have thought of him as a golfer. But we passed a golf course, and you would have thought he was in Disneyland. He got so excited. I was like, "What? Richie Havens plays golf? Everything I know is wrong." I think I've had so many golfers in my car this week, like in my Lyft car, and I think I'm missing out on a big market of people and men here. I think I should write some golf jokes. Oh yeah.
Well, I mean, because the other thing that people always say is that the stereotype is that you should be able to find a single man like in the church or in the work environment. Now, some people say that you should date within the work environment because then you're bringing work and play in the same environment. But I was wondering what your views on that are, because I've heard some people say that some of the best dates you can find are some of those people that you might find in the church, and I don't know whether you're a church girl or not.
I do a comedy show at the church, but it's a brewery. It really is. It's a brewery, but like that, I don't know. I'm not really. I grew up Baptist, but I don't know. I don't really know if I'm a good. I don't know if a good church boy is gonna want to deal with my shenanigans. Like, my life is pretty wild. I'm like going everywhere all the time, and I need somebody that is like understanding of that. Like, if somebody's like trying to have kids and all that, I don't know. What, are you gonna bring a baby to an open mic?
Yeah, that might be a little bit confusing, because what's the furthest you've actually gone to do a show at? Because, like I said, I know you do a lot around Florida, but what's the furthest so far that you've done your shows at?
I think probably Jacksonville, but I'm trying to do some tours. So half the reason of me running these rooms that I have here, these shows that I do, I want people from out of town to know my name, and I want people from out of town to know when they come to Orlando, they can come, like, if they connect with me, I'll let them do a spot at one of my shows. But, yeah, I like to be known out of town. That was a major goal. So whenever I do tour, I'll know people that have been to my room and had a good time.
And I imagine trying to have an entertainment of any field of any sort in Orlando has probably got to be really hard, because you're in the middle of Disney and you're in one of those areas where everybody, there's that old stereotype about it in California and in New York, everybody is an actor, but they also are all working as bartenders and waitresses and various other stereotypical jobs that people get caught up in. And I imagine that's the same thing with Orlando, because I'm imagining that everything, it's been a minute since I've been to Orlando, but I'm imagining everything in Orlando is pretty much Disney.
No, there's a whole huge underculture that exists. Our podcast culture is really, really strong. We've got these little groups. We've got radio groups. We've got lots of little boroughs, little neighborhoods that exist, little communities, and it's a really good little thriving community we have here that is not just the tourist area. We locals pretty much stay away from there, and we stay in our own little lane. So if you ever come to Orlando, you got to come to one of my shows. If you come to Central Florida, hit me up. Let me know if you're coming around, and I'll let you know when one of the shows is. And I'll give you some suggestions of places that are really cool that are, not necessarily marketed to Disney. You can have a 5-star dining experience that is not at Disney Springs. Like, that's 100% possible.
Well, and that's actually, for the first time ever, and I'm 56, for the first time ever, I went to visit a friend that lives in Vegas, and I had never been west of the Mississippi, and while I was visiting them, we stayed pretty much away from the Strip. I mean, they drove me past the Strip and showed me where the Strip was, but they live in, I believe it's called North Vegas, and you're right, there was a lot of things they were able to do, and they tried to stay away as much as possible from the Strip, and I think that that's the same attitude that they have in Vegas that y'all have in Orlando if you live in the actual town, that they try to stay away from the madness of the Strip. Just like I imagine, I imagine feel most of y'all that live in D.C. don't necessarily try to get in the middle of what's going on Capitol Hill and that whole part of that area. Y'all probably try to stay in those areas that are not so much what I call the political and the museum tourism kind of parts of D.C.
That's true. We have a little, about 2 blocks from here, we have a little an intersection that we call the center of the universe, and that's where I go to get groceries, get my laundry, get a haircut. Anything I need to do is within a couple of blocks of my house. And I don't fool around with Capitol Hill or even the monuments. The only time we go and see the monuments is when we have people from out of town, and they want to see them, and we'll take them. Take them around. My partner Judy, she's world renowned for her nighttime driving tour of the monuments, and that's about the only time we ever go.
Take them around during the nighttime when there's less of the crowd and things of that nature. So that probably makes a lot of sense. And plus it gives you a different view, because before y'all joined the conversation, one of the things I was going to tell Dean is that I don't know how it is in Daytona, but I know here in North Carolina, in D.C., and in New Jersey, where Dean is, it's downright cold. And as I was, I just had apartments.
It's freezing here.
Oh, it's freezing there as well. So it's freezing up and down the East Coast. But the thing about living in an apartment living, which is what I do currently right now, is that sometimes the apartments will want to do the renovation thing. And when they want to renovate, that means you got to move. So I had to last few days, and I'm pretty much done now, but I've been moving stuff from one apartment to the other apartment so they can renovate the other apartment. Of course, that all means that the rents go up, because that's what happens is they bump up your rents and make things a little bit more expensive and everything. But at least it's a nicer apartment, and it's a better apartment, but I will be paying a little bit extra. But while I was going back and forth between the apartments, and they were only I'd say maybe less than a couple of 100 yards apart from each other, there was a gentleman that goes to Duke University, and he was checking out the lunar eclipse. And it was like about 15, 20 degrees outside, and he had more cajoons than I did when staying out there in the cold. I think he stayed out there for a good hour and a half. I'm not going to lie. I did go out there and take some pictures for my Instagram account of the moon, but I only did it for like about 2 or 3 minutes. And after I saw the shade of the moon, and the moon was getting slightly covered, and then later on I saw that the moon was back in its full force and everything. But he was out there, best I could tell, for at least probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And I'm sitting there going like, it must be that whole young energy, because, like I said, he's a Duke student, so he's probably somewhere between 18 and 22.
That's pretty good. And I'm like you. I ran out for about 2 minutes at a time. Ran out, looked, ran back in, ran back out. Yeah,
I think that was probably
cold.
the quicker way to do it. Did you go out at all, Dean, to look at the lunar eclipse?
No, I didn't, man. It was -5 out here in Jersey. No moon is worth me freezing for, bro. No, sir. Look, I let people take pictures, and then they posted them on the internet. I got to see what it looked like right in the comfort of my house, man.
What about you, Leslie? Did you go out and try to? Well, you were driving Lyft. I'm sure you saw the moon all kinds of different ways.
No, I was taken up by the airport. It was so hazy. I couldn't see it. I was so upset.
No.
So you actually did want to see it, but you couldn't see it because the weather didn't want to cooperate. Now, that's happened to me before as well. You get all pumped up about it. You try to find a nice vantage point, and then the clouds or the weather doesn't want to cooperate.
Yeah, it was just like pollution, it seemed like. It just wasn't really clear out.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Now, Leslie, are you a pet person, and do you do any routines about the pets that you may own?
I do have a dog. His name is Duncan. He's adorable. He's got a little beard. Sometimes he has this little dog carrier that I bring with me, and he jumps right in it, and he sits in it, and he gets like in it on stage sometimes. But I don't bring him out a lot because people really love him, so I just kind of want to keep people coming out, so maybe I'll bring him every once in a while.
Mm-hmm. See, you have the problem that another one of our guests had, because we have a singer locally named Reese Palmer, and she's been on the show before, but she's she's a neo-soul country singer. She started off when she was living, I believe, in Tennessee as kind of a country singer, but she also does neo-soul and various other sounds. But she has a young daughter. The young daughter, Gracie, is probably somewhere in between the ages of 6 and 7, or maybe somewhere in that age range. And she has a habit of, even though Reese is an amazing singer, she also has a habit of sometimes stealing the show. I think that old adage about pets and kids is very true. You don't want to bring them out there because they might steal the show.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well,
I'm sure even you feel. Have you ever had any encounters where somebody was more interested in the music, the animal or the kid that was involved than yourself? Or one of the cases where either a kid or a pet stole the show of where the various places that you performed? So you've performed all over the world. So even a strange pet could have stolen the show in some of the places you've been.
Yeah. Well, I've had that happen. I mean, you might think I'm full of it, but I've had the good fortune of meeting some young kids that are really prodigious players, and I like seeing that, because then I know our music is in good hands. That it's going to be passed on to younger people that are really good at it. Of course, you know, I do, you know, like